Welcome everyone to today's webinar, RCM in 2021, Roadmap to a Strong Financial Comeback. On behalf of Becker's Healthcare, thank you for joining us. Before we begin, I'm going to walk through a few housekeeping instructions. We will begin today's webinar with a presentation, and we'll have time at the end of the hour for a question and answer session. You can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar by typing them into the Q&A box you see on your screen. Today's session is being recorded and will be available after the event. You can use the same link you used to log into today's webinar to access that recording. We will have a series of poll questions during today's webinar. You can submit the answer that best applies to you directly on your screen in the slides box. Also, please take a few minutes to fill out the event survey. It's located on the right-hand side of your webinar slides. Thank you in advance for your participation. If at any time you don't see your slides moving or have trouble with the audio, try refreshing your browser. You can also submit any technical questions into the Q&A box. We are here to help. With that, I'm pleased to welcome today's speaker, Daniel Lau, who is the Director of Operations at Healthcare Financial Resources. Daniel, thank you for being here today. I'll turn the floor over to you to kick off today's conversation.
All right, well, thank you very much for the intro. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day to be here with me today. As mentioned earlier, my name is Daniel Lau, and I am the Director of Operations at Healthcare Financial Resources. Today's webinar is focused on ensuring a solid financial comeback for 2021 using some of the major lessons that we've learned from the PFS perspective during the unprecedented year, which was 2020. A lot of the issues seen in 2020 are still continuing today as COVID continues to impact daily operations. During this webinar, we're going to be diving into a few ways to improve your financial situation in today's environment by diving into staffing impacts, the changed landscape of payers and service area admissions, as well as diving into the importance of analytics. I know the majority of this group listening understands the importance and the issues that go into all three of these categories. So all of us know when it comes to revenue cycle, the first item everyone needs to be able to do is prioritize management. With the vast amount of variables that are involved with each segment of our industry, at times it can feel impossible to address every single one. Well, with today's environment, we no longer have the ability to simply prioritize and take a wait-and-see approach on the smaller impactful items. It's imperative that we squeeze every dollar owed to us while not missing the big picture. And today I intend on walking you through the process to do just that. Utilizing technology that's already been out there, keeping an eye out for the new normals that are forming, and combining that with experienced revenue cycle minds is the approach all of us should be taking for our revenue cycle operations teams. And personally, I think the best way to ensure we squeeze out every dollar while still keeping up on the most pressing items is to ensure that our staff have the tools and the skill sets needed to eliminate all possibilities and confusion in there. At the end of this webinar, as previously mentioned, we'll also be having a survey. We would really appreciate if everyone who could stay on and complete it at the end of this call. We really do value and appreciate the feedback. We will also be going over Q&A at the end of the webinar. If you have any questions, please submit them through the webinar tool. If there are any unanswered questions, we will respond via email to each of you directly as well. So with that, kind of diving into a little bit about the background here. Let's start this overview by setting the table as to what providers saw as a whole in 2020 and why we're even having this discussion today. According to estimates by the AHA, in July of 2020, hospitals and health systems were estimated to lose $320+ billion due to COVID. Looking at the graph to the right, you can see that even with the total relief dollars available for distribution, providers have taken significant hits due to this pandemic. People are scared to leave their house, causing ER and elective procedure service areas to be impacted substantially. As we slowly return to a new normal, making sure your revenue is coming in stronger than ever has never been more important. Regardless of how your 2020 ended and how your 2021 has started, there were some major takeaways that we learned over the last 12 months. In order to ensure the highest financial comeback, we're going to be discussing the 3 major initiatives to focus on in 2021, which again are staffing challenges, changing payer and service area landscapes, and benefits of analytics. Now, before we dive into staffing, I'd like to start off with the first poll question of today. So we're going to be giving 30 seconds to fill this out, but if you could, please start off with the question is, have you moved your workforce to remote? The first option is yes, fully. The second is no. And the third is a hybrid of options. And again, we appreciate everybody taking the time to answer this quick poll. I'll give it about another 10 to 15 seconds, and then we will jump forward and see what everybody says. All right, about 5 more seconds here, and then we will jump forward. All right. So as expected, a lot of you have already moved to some sort of remote workforce. The start of our staffing conversation is going to focus on working remotely. So in the current environment, ensuring you have a remote workforce is critical to the financial success of your PFS operations. Obviously, not all hospital staff can work from home, but parts that can will ensure ops has less hiccups. Allowing a remote workforce has significant benefits as well as some serious challenges. The current reality is that brick and mortar is not a necessity for all portions of the healthcare business. If anything, this pandemic proved that working from home or remote locations is here to stay more than ever before. The new normal will most likely be a significant portion of your workforce working remotely ongoing. The ability to have staff effectively work from home can allow significant cost savings if able to reduce your brick and mortar footprint. I know that's easier said than a lot of us who may already have some leases that we're still paying out or some mortgages we're still working on. Staff definitely feel safer working in their home versus working in the office right now. And when a team member unfortunately tests positive, you want to ensure everyone else in the office feels as safe as possible. Performing deep office cleaning and shutting down your office to ensure a team member's safety is a constant concern. That concern can be mitigated with remote work. The less people you have in the office right now, obviously the less exposure that you're going to be having. Attendance can also be a serious challenge over the last year for a multitude of reasons. Allowing team members the flexibility to work from home helps to maintain a reliable workforce when there's something that could potentially get in the way of coming to the physical office. If that's illness due to COVID, if it's weather, if it's traffic, any other reason, I think it's really a good option to ensure that you have a solid footprint. Allowing a remote workforce provides the opportunity to also partner with outsourced vendors or other resources who can provide backup in areas that may not have received the full attention that you would have liked due to attendance or any other staffing issues. For example, if you have a need in insurance AR or accounts at a certain age, a certain dollar, a certain denial problem, there are a lot of resources out there to provide assistance if you need it. The remote workforce can also add significant upside in regards to recruiting and adding skilled resources outside of your immediate location. Great to be able to widen your talent pool and give you options to target nationally versus just locally. And when moving to a remote setup, you're going to run into a few challenges, I can promise you this. The first one that I think is all on our minds is security and compliance standards are the top priority in our industry. And when moving remote, it heightens the necessity to ensure PHI privacy. When your team moves to a remote setting, it is imperative that home site visits, sandbox environments, and any other control features that need to be implemented are done to ensure the utmost compliance. Working with a company to ensure your overall compliance is top-notch will also help you make sure that your data is safe, as well as minimize your risk of exposure. At our company, we and all of our partners are high trust certified, for example, and ensuring your security framework is as thorough as possible is going to allow you to minimize your risk. Besides the security, managing your resources is probably the next most difficult task. In a remote setting, it requires different approaches and different measurement systems be put in place. At the office, you could stand up and walk around and just see what your team was doing. Managing your staff's efficiency level now requires a lot more communication and a lot more electronic monitoring. Do you have system tools and metrics in place to monitor your staff and watch their daily performance? And in addition to managing your resources, training those resources is another target area. So working with those team members in a remote setting presents its own set of unique challenges. But it's not too much different from being in the office, especially with Zoom and all these other great options in terms of software programs. The difference in this new environment can be basic issues like whether your team member can even use the Zoom link, which I know we've probably all had that problem, or how to handle a training class of 10 to 20 FTEs. You know, a lot of that personal touch is lost when you're not in the room with them, including gauging their morale and their focus. So managing your team members and following up with them to ensure their success is more critical than ever. Some of the things that you should be working on is, what does their daily downtime look like? Are there gaps in work? What are their core areas of struggle, or what is preventing them from achieving the optimal performance you're expecting? Where are they scoring low on their QA audits? How often are you auditing them? Do you have scorecards for your team members to provide self-assessments of their perceived skill set versus maybe how their manager is actually viewing their performance? What is your daily process to communicate with those low performers? I promise you, the more you communicate with them, the better they're going to feel, and the more supported they're going to feel, and the better they're going to ultimately perform. And have you implemented shadowing sessions, as well as revamping your training programs, including testing and other staff engagement processes? Everyone learns differently, and customizing a process that works best for your organization will ensure your team performs at the highest possible level. So I guess, the last thing on this is, what is your company's current position on a remote workforce? For a lot of you, I saw that it's currently not set up with your system. And, if your organization is not utilizing this approach, there is significant opportunity and upside. And if you have a chance, take a look and see how it works for your team. All right. Moving on. Doing everything it takes to make a successful team member is worth every minute and every dollar. In regards to insurance AR follow-up, a team member has to be able to review an explanation of benefits or an EMR system to figure out what the root issue is that encompasses over 3,000 CARC and RARC variations. If you start to add in specific payer guidelines and differences in utilization codes, this becomes a significant challenge. And employees in our space are, having a quite complex job sometimes. And, that a lot of the time does not come always with pay rates that are reflective of the complexity that they're working with. And the creation of training materials and ensuring knowledge transfer is at its most efficient will allow staff to perform at their highest level. The more of the processes that are automated or built into your system, the less your team members will need to pivot and shift between viewing different process flows or training materials. Setting your staff's daily work focus to target like issues can always be a very helpful possibility to improve output. And the more different issues that are available in a team member's daily focus, the more they're really going to need to remember, and the more there is opportunity for error. So moving forward with this, to show the complexity of some of the processes that your team members go through, I'm really going to walk through a basic denial example. And this slide shows a base process flow for a no authorization denial that any normal AR staff member would go through when trying to resolve this issue. This team member would look to see, okay, did the front-end team obtain an authorization by reviewing an EMR system, a payer portal, or any other system that would help them to determine that. If an auth is identified, and it then requires confirmation to ensure it's valid on that date of service and for that procedure, they also have to confirm whether it was medically relevant by the insurance company and approved. If there was no authorization obtained, the FTE then has to verify if they're within a retro time limit and figure out how to prove medical necessity within those set time limits. And if within those time limits, they need to then verify who handles these clinical appeals internally, within your organization, and then make sure their notes describe exactly what's going on to guide that clinical person to write that appeal, as well as make it to the correct department or location, things start to get complex really fast. And if you add on to that, building in customized processes due to systems, due to exactly how you guys want to do it as an organization, it's imperative that not only are these processes written down, but accurate to ensure the best possible outcome in guiding your staff. If one of your team members left your organization today, do you have all of the processes written out to ensure a smooth transition for the next employee? We would go on in just this one denial, and this is just some of the stuff your back-end staff are struggling through every single day. With the thousands of remittance codes carriers apply on EOBs comes a never-ending number of processes that your employees must become masters of. I think this slide demonstrates what someone has to remember on a daily basis, and it's not even a hundredth of what they need to know. Can you remember all of these processes off the top of your head? A lot of things that can cause an account to go off in the wrong direction, and while this may seem like common knowledge for your experienced team members, when a newer person or struggling team member is working an account, having a system-guided platform is going to greatly assist in improving their performance. So kind of setting the table into some review here is when an account is worked incorrectly the first time, it can impact the collectability of it by 50%. And the tighter the time limits on the account, the less collectible the account becomes over time. So the question is, how to ensure the account is worked correctly from the beginning and ensure your team members follow the correct process. It was this exact problem that prompted our company to think how we could use an automated system in our process flows in a different manner to come up with a unique solution to target this problem. A major starting point was to utilize 835 and 837 data. The 835 data allows you to pinpoint the accounts for your major issues. That issue can then be mapped into a root category to allow for distribution of like problematic issues. Mapping all of those CARC and RARC combinations into classifications is going to take some time, but the data insight and opportunity for process improvement is well worth the energy. In the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, you can see an example of the mapping of the CARC and RARC codes to a specific process. In this example, we're going right back to the no authorization process that we previously discussed. Our solution to all of this was to build a step-by-step automated approach for accounts receivable follow-up. So this solution allows a rep to pick up at the problem and reduce unnecessary time wasted to identify the core issue. We then took the old school approach of using process flows and built a rule engine-based response system to reduce the steps that an FTE has to remember and guide them to take the appropriate next step. This process has proven very helpful to struggling staff, new hires, and existing team members. The screenshot to the right is a snapshot of some of the rules for the no authorization process flow that we just went through a few minutes ago. In this instance, CARC 197, or a combination of other CARC and RARC codes, would trigger an account to start at the no authorization module. Instead of being written out in a PDF format, it is built into our system. The rule set allows for us to constantly monitor and update our process flows to ensure everybody is providing the best possible output without manually pulling up a process flow document, which I know a lot of you may say we have hundreds, if not 1,000 different process flows. Your team members, team leads, and supervisors know these processes better than anybody. So working with them to ensure these things are as up to date as possible at all times is going to reduce your errors and is a never-ending opportunity to tighten up performance and improve cash generation. Moving further into this overview, while traditional process flows require you to read along and follow a series of what-ifs, what we built was a series of Q&As that a team member can click through one step at a time. Once the answer is clicked, another answer will pop up and guide the FTE through the resolution process. You can also see in this example some clickable answers to some basic questions. The question is was an authorization obtained? And there's a couple options here. The auth was obtained and it was valid. The auth was obtained but it was invalid. Or the auth was not obtained at all. Each one of these selectable options has another potential guided path to take you down until you have reached the end of your work for that step in the resolution process. Providing the basics to remember while working an account also helps to keep the team member within the lines and working an account effectively. This slide also shows a few of the objectives or reminders that someone needs to remember while working the account they are on. We found that having reminders during each step of this custom-built process system helps to guide a team member through what they should be thinking about during that step in the process. As an FTE is working through their account, we also found that notation on average can take from 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the technicality of the issue that they're working on. Considering an FTE in this industry needs to be working at minimum 40 accounts per day, depending on the issue, some people would argue 50 to 60, speeding up notation time and process flow review went hand in hand to target output improvement. As a rep is working through our system and selecting answers to the questions and filling out the required fields, we had our technology auto-create the notation for our staff. Reduction in notation time and notation uniformity allows for the team member to increase efficiency and the operation to more easily understand, which is the more important part, what was identified by the team member and what the next step is to resolution. And I can tell you that our QA department is very happy that we have found a way to have more uniform notes that are easier to understand. And diving into the last part of this, in regards to our homegrown system, we know there are some payers who are not set up electronically, and that 835 process is not necessarily going to work. So we realized that we needed to have a tool to help assist guide them at a starting point if an automatic one cannot be assessed. So we also created this tool within the system that is going to allow a team member to take the EOB remittance codes and plug them into the system. The system then runs the code combinations through a rule generator to identify the correct starting point for that account. Now, while this job continues to get more complex, focusing on your staff as a top priority, as well as IT innovation and process improvement, is going to help increase operational efficiency. So my question to everyone on this call is, what are your plans for automation? How are you focusing operational time on improving staff efficiency through tools and processes? Before we dive into the changing landscape of payers and service areas, I had a few more polling questions to ask everyone. So the first question is, have you seen elective and ER non-COVID procedures returning to normal? And again, we'll give about 30 seconds on this, but the first selectable option is 80% or above back to normal, 50% to 79% back, or below 50% of prior rates. Again, I'll give a few seconds here for everyone to fill this out. Please do it to the best of your ability. I know you guys may not have the actual statistics in front of you, but if you could take a rough guess, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, give it about 5 more seconds here, and then we'll see what everybody said. Okay, well, looks like the far majority here is still seeing what I think we're all seeing across the country, which is, we're getting slightly back to normal between 50 and 79%. Some of you are seeing as well what we're seeing, which is, it's a rough time out there with less than 50% of what you were seeing before COVID. And some of you are the lucky few that are seeing 80% or more in being back to normal. The next polling question that we have is, are you seeing a change in your payer mix? So please select all that apply on this one. Again, we'll give another 30 seconds for this. Are you seeing an increase in government payer mix? Are you seeing an increase in government replacement payer mix? Are you seeing no change at all? Or are you also seeing reduced managed care and commercial payer mix? Again, thank you all for your answers and overviews. This will help guide for the future slides coming up. All right, give it about 5 more seconds here, and then we will dive into what everybody's answer was. So a lot of you have seen no change. A lot of you have seen government replacement payer mix increase as well as government payer mix increase. And I know a lot of people are seeing reduced managed care and commercial payer mixes across the board. So thank you all for that input. So as everyone may already be aware, and it seems like everybody was from that poll, the impact of our economy and COVID has drastically changed where the revenue is coming from. For instance, the change of payer mix. Looking at the graph on the right, Medicaid enrollment volume has increased 9+% since 2019. Unemployment has left people with no other choice but to go on government programs. The reimbursement rates on these traditional government plans are much lower than commercial and managed care plans, which is going to have a significant impact on your reimbursement levels. How are you maximizing every dollar on the accounts coming in the door? Do you have the resources and skill set to target these accounts or volume increases on these specific accounts? Timely filing is much shorter, for instance, on Medicaid payers, and if you're not ensuring a backup plan to get assistance where needed, it could even cause more financial loss for the smaller dollars that you're already going to get from those accounts. And another part that we're going to really dive into further in this webinar is, are you monitoring your rejections and ensuring that these accounts are going out as cleanly as possible? Shifting payer service areas has also had a big, significant change in the last year. Emergency and elective procedures have taken a big hit as people prefer safer and cheaper alternatives right now, like telemedicine and urgent care. The migration to stay home and away from other people, and in some cases, especially hospitals, due to the potential COVID exposure is a real issue, and I really hope that that is resolved soon enough. As more and more people are vaccinated, it is everyone's hope that these procedures continue to get back to pre-COVID levels, allowing our profitabilities to get back to normal. But for patients coming in the door for non-COVID procedures, how are you prioritizing those most collectible accounts? I promise you, unless your payer mix is mostly government, you're going to have a big opportunity to collect on those managed care and those commercial claims. And as you're returning and preparing to return back to normal, I think the big question is, what we don't know is that as COVID volumes continue to decrease and the large dollar COVID revenue starts to go away, how long is that gap going to be between when people start to trust coming back into hospitals for ER and elective procedures? This thought undoubtedly has CEOs and CFOs up all night thinking what the next few months are going to look like for their business. What major initiatives would help to ensure the accounts that drive your largest reimbursement are your core target? As things get back to normal, which we are hoping happens obviously as soon as possible, are you set up to succeed if things went back to what was pre-COVID? Where is your largest opportunity for improvement as an operation, as a company? Do you have holes in your front-end departments due to staffing or training issues or attendance problems? Are authorizations, eligibilities, AR follow-up, clinical appeals, any other areas of opportunity going to be able to be kept current if the volumes did return? Where do you need help, and are you ready for that shift back to normal? All right, diving into, I think, our last overall topic for the day, which is going to be a little bit of a longer one. But, diving into the importance of analytics and ensuring these 7 opportunities are targeted in 2021 are going to be very important to your revenue opportunities. The first thing I wanted to bring up is price transparency. Hospital price transparency requirements went into effect on January 1st, 2021. CMS plans to do an audit and sample of hospitals for compliance starting as of last month, including investigating complaints that are submitted to CMS. Is your institution prepared to comply with the requirements of the Hospital Price Transparency Final Rule? Some penalties of not being in compliance with this rule include potential civil monetary penalty not to exceed $300 per day, and publicize that penalty on their website if the hospital fails to respond or request or comply. Another major thing coming up this year or at the end of this year is lab PAMA and PAMA private payer lab rates. In the CARES Act, which was passed on Friday, March 27, 2020, Congress modified the reporting period in which private payer laboratory test rates must be reported by applicable laboratories. This is a daunting financial reporting task, and in the 2019 OPPS final rule, Medicare added a new reporting requirement to hospital outreach laboratories, which submit claims for non-patient services like blood sample processing without patient contact on the 14X type of bill. And if that hospital received greater than $12,500 in Medicare revenues or reimbursement for non-patient service claims billed on that 14 bill type during a specific time frame, they're going to have to start reporting this information in the period beginning of January 1st, 2022 through March 31st, 2022. And why this is important is there are significant penalties along with this one. It can be up to $10,000 per violation per day. And, that may apply if reporting is not complete, accurate, and timely. There is no exception for critical access hospitals as well. So please make sure, if you are not set up for this, that you connect with somebody who does understand. COVID coding requirements is obviously this is going down each day in the current world that we're in. But just make sure that your team is following appropriate COVID billing requirements and ensuring claims are going out correctly to reduce that delayed reimbursement for these accounts. Another big opportunity is charge capture review. There are disparate data elements which flow together to create a patient claim. And the goal of the charge capture or claim review is to audit and reconcile as many data elements within the claim back to the actual originating source. So targeting a claim review and tracing the following items from the claim to the medical record, departmental worksheet, or remittance advices is going to help identify revenue opportunity. Are you looking at HIM coded surgical procedures, separately billable nursing procedures, supplies, charge capture, codes, and compliance of those charges, drugs, codes, and unit multipliers, determination of evaluation and management levels for emergency and clinic visits, and business office, HIM assigned modifiers, as well as payment and denials. Outside of charge capture review, looking into your charge master is always a great opportunity. Do you have a process in place for the HIM coding staff to identify and correct charge master errors, compliance issues, and missing charges? Checking invalid HCPCS and revenue codes, checking line items for charge master compliance and modifiers, checking valid code assignment, checking pricing against fee schedule and APC, and reporting and implementing updates. Another one of a couple favorite opportunities here are contract management and zero balance review. Just because a balance is zero doesn't mean that there's not a way to collect on some of those accounts. And performing a bad debt review and looking into potential lost revenue is a great way to improve future performance as well as reverse some bad debt reserves by collecting some old cash. Every minute your staff spends working on clerical issues is another minute that they are not targeting your cash generation. A large amount of time is spent on clerical tasks that is relating to shoring up contract management variances. Whether these are sequestration adjustments, GZ modifiers, incorrect stop loss application, outpatient surgical rules, government fee schedules, etc., there is always opportunity to tighten up your expectations and net your system to as close to true as possible. Look into your contract management loads or partner with somebody who can be used to assist with a reconciliation to ensure when a claim does pay, the account is adjudicating to zero or to the patient for easy movement to the next responsible party. And then finally, denial management and AR follow-up. While working through your accounts receivable portfolio, there is usually the opportunity to tighten it up somewhere. There's a lot of opportunity in regards to the smaller dollars or the aged accounts or your problematic payers. There are a lot of really well-priced solutions out there that can help alleviate the stress of working through these less collectible accounts, allowing your team to focus on targeting the younger or higher dollar accounts while somebody else helps to maximize the cash on those older or smaller dollar accounts. Assessing your KPI is also going to give you a big opportunity to identify areas where cash can be increased. What are your top generating financial classes? And do you have special teams assigned to these accounts? What service areas are generating you the largest returns? What service area or payer is causing the largest amount of rejections for you? Who do you have assigned to target your largest dollar claims? And are you staffed appropriately to take on your current portfolio? Alongside of AR analysis and denial management, one of the first things that comes to mind is having some sort of payer scorecard. Now, while I'm sure everyone on this call has a payer metric that they use to measure performance on each of their top payers, I would say it's very critical to look at each payer on at least a monthly basis to see if there are any changes. There are new problems that happen on the payer side all the time, and this can cause large groups of accounts to go unpaid that may have not had that issue previously. A good starting point is to look at your average charges billed versus the contractual adjustment applied. Then compare your allowable amounts for those claims. Verifying what portion was applied to the patient out of that allowable is also going to tell you a great story as to why your cash may not be coming in as quick or as it was before, or maybe it indicates that it's coming in a lot quicker as less was applied to the patient liability. Comparing your allowable yield versus your paid yield is also a very good high-level overview to give you a good starting point into the performance of a month-to-month comparison. Looking into why these numbers are going up or down is going to ensure you're targeting every way possible to generate as much reimbursement as you can. What is also being seen right now is that insurance's hold times are extremely excessive, and they are having the same staffing problems that we are. It seems more and more communication is now being handled through instant messaging or inquiries through these payer portals, which, to be honest, I would have thought would have been faster than making a phone call. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is that these instant messaging reviews on problematic accounts can take at least an hour or longer, especially while waiting for a team member to do their research and come back to you with the next steps. If you need to escalate to a supervisor these issues, that can take hours for you to even get a hold of somebody. And that's if you don't get hung up on multiple times. Do you have payer calls set up with your top paying insurances to walk them through examples of your issue accounts? Building account logs of payer issues are going to help prepare you for these calls and bring examples to walk them through the difficulty you and your staff are running into when working with the team. These calls are also often ways to get accounts reprocessed en masse due to reducing large problems instead of working claims one at a time. I know that's the best way, at least in my mind, to get it done. Outside of these scorecards, You should also be looking into your denials and what is driving your delay in reimbursement. So CARC and RARC combinations is a good way to view your problems from a really high level. One difficult aspect of this is just figuring out what the winning problem is. You need to create rule-based processes that determine your winning problems, and that will allow you to see the opportunities that lie within your inventory. And having the ability to search your denials by financial class or facility or follow-up status, discharge timeframes, check issuance timeframes, as well as CARC and RARC and procedure codes. While it sounds like a lot, that is really going to give you a great starting point to see where your problems are. But it is only the beginning. So the graph on this slide is an example of a hospital system's top 25 winning rejection codes. The graph is stacked with service areas that are most impacted for each of those rejections. And you can see on the bottom side, or bottom part of this chart, 45, 97, 16, those are all the CARC codes that are winning there. Connect with your IT team and look into what tools are out there for analytical assistance to make this analysis less labor intensive. I would say everything is considered a rejection, even things like 45 and 97, which are traditionally identifying contractual adjustments. There's opportunity in each one of these codes to find additional cash or delays driving slowed resolution. This graph is just a starting point, as I mentioned, and is going to require some deep dives from your analytical team members to find your wins. What we're going to do is go through some examples of that on the next two slides. We're going to walk through two of the top 5 rejections on this top 25 graph, which are CARC 186 and CARC 23. And you can see on CARC 186, it has one major service area of the emergency room versus 23 has multiple issues across multiple different service areas. So diving into 186 here, this slide shows an overview of CARC 186, and you can see in the drop-down in the upper left-hand corner here that Humana is the major driver for this rejection. And 99.9% of the rejections under CARC 186 for this analysis are related to Humana. So CARC 186, it stands for level of care change or adjustment to the payment made, or simply they're just downgrading emergency room reimbursement, causing this hospital system to have to prove ER level necessity on almost 2,000 accounts. In this example, this hospital system is being underpaid on average $163.17 for each one of their emergency room claims. You can see in the bottom right-hand chart that some of these hospitals from this 10-hospital system are impacted much more than others. And these 1,800 examples are costing this hospital system over $300,000 in reimbursement just on the current portfolio, not what's coming in every single day. The only way to overturn this problem is, unfortunately, to send medical records and hope to prove that what was billed is actually going to be approved by the insurance company in their process of medical necessity levels. So creating an overview of what issues are within each rejection allows you to start compiling a known issues log. And having that log and sharing it with your staff is going to make sure that they're aware of all the current top problems that are going on within your inventory. The more you can drive your staff to respond back with identified trends, the more efficient your team can be in distribution inventory or working through problematic situations. Anytime there's an opportunity that affects a large group of accounts, see if you can work with IT to create edits or rule-based processes to reduce the manual effort needed to work through these repetitive tasks. Now, not all issues are that black and white. In this example, CARC 23, you can see some have just a CARC code and some also have RARC codes in this top chart here. CARC 23 stands for based on primary adjudication, or a lot of us know it as primary paid more than secondary allows. This usually just means that the secondary insurance is just not going to coordinate benefits on this account, and it's going to require a manual contractual adjustment, or hopefully your system has an edit in place. while it does end up in that simple adjustment process, if you can find a way to put an edit in place to take care of it. Part 23 with no RARC code is alluding to some insurance order issues for Blue Cross and Aetna, which is an application of this code that someone would really not necessarily expect unless they dove in and found this. And if you look at CART 23 with an N23 rejection in that same chart, the rejection is actually identifying that when a secondary that pays after Medicare crosses over the claim, it's actually causing that secondary payment to post undistributed because Medicare had crossed the bill over, but their system didn't NRP that to the next responsible party. Now, this is going to now require a team member to go in and manually fix the bucket issue in the EMR system, causing delayed resolution and wasted effort on something that's really going to bring you no money. And this same combination is also seeing Medicare not crossing over their EOB to the secondary insurance, causing another process delay and more manual work. This would be an example of an opportunity to reach out to the payer and find out, hey, what was driving this issue to happen in the first place, and how can we reduce this in the future? Constantly looking into each of your rejections is going to allow you to not only know what's going on in your operation, but also see where you have the opportunity to reduce manual effort and increase cash. This is always an evolving process. So even when you think you have it all figured out, I promise they're going to find a different way to hide it somewhere else, and you're going to have to figure out where your new things are popping up and how to deal with those situations. So in terms of going through the denial analytics, I would say that section is completed. But before we go into some Q&A, I did have another couple poll questions that I wanted to ask everyone. Again, we'll give everyone 30 seconds to fill out this poll question. In regards to what you're seeing, which insurance AR aspect is causing you the biggest headaches? So is it large balance, small volume, or large volume, small balance, age problematic or stuck accounts, both small balance and aged AR, or do you have neither of those problems? Again, I'll give everybody about another 10 or 15 seconds to select which one is giving them their biggest headache. Okay. 10 more seconds here. All right. So in this case, it looks like both small balance and aged AR is the biggest problem for everyone on the call, and I would say that it's the same thing that we're constantly experiencing as well on our side. And if there's anywhere that you need help, I definitely suggest that you reach out to someone who can assist you. If there's an opportunity for your team to be targeting on more collectible areas while someone is helping you work on those smaller dollars and aged accounts. I do have one more polling question for everyone. And this last question is, are you compliant with the CMS price transparency requirement? And again, we'll give about 30 seconds here to fill out this polling question. So the first option is yes, we are compliant, no, we are not, or 3, we are unsure. Again, thank you all very much for your input and helping us to steer this conversation. I'll give it about another 15 seconds, and we'll see what everybody says. All right. So looking into it, it looks like a lot of people are compliant with it. There are some people who are not, and there's some people who are not sure. And either way, there's definitely still opportunity to work with someone to figure out next steps there. I know there could be some confusion on the process. There could be, some opportunity to want to discuss it further in the position of your organization. But again, if there are any questions on that, feel free to reach out to us or anybody else who is familiar with this process. All right, a little bit about us before we dive into our Q&A section here. Well, I can see we had some great questions to go through, but before we get into that session, just a brief word from our sponsor. So today's webinar is brought to you by Hfri. Hfri is a leading insurance AR recovery and resolution provider who specializes in handling small balances as well as age-problematic assurance accounts. We're headquartered in Elgin, Illinois, which is right outside of Chicago, and we're High Trust CSF certified. You can see from the slide here that our philosophy is that we're going to apply appropriate resources to work every single account to the final dollar, employ extensive use of automation, and identify root causes to reduce denied accounts at the source. Though I can tell you that here at Hfri, we believe the only way to truly bring value to our clients is by ensuring our people have the tools and skill sets needed to be successful. That's why we made the investment, internally built our own automated step-by-step guidance system, as previously mentioned. This has been one of the best decisions I can say that we've made as a company, as the results have been tremendous. The best part of all of this is Hfri's fees are contingency-based. There's no long-term commitments, and you can always get out of our contract at any time for any reason, and we're willing to put our performance guarantees in the contract. We feel this is our way of contractually obligating ourselves to perform at a high level at all times, because if we don't, then we're not going to make any money and you won't be able to get out whenever you want, which is something we never want to see. With our service, you'll see your AR days, denials, total write-offs, and bad debt reserves all go down. If you have any interest at all in learning more about Hfri or getting a free non-committal quote for our service, even if just a spot project to test our services, please feel free to reach out anytime. Our intro calls are typically 20 to 30 minutes long, and you can even request a demo of how our internal system works and see the proof for yourself and how we're different than most RCM vendors out there. The demo is pretty fun, so I strongly encourage all of you to check it out. And lastly, we have acquired Para Healthcare nearly 2 years ago, and the combination of our services have really been a perfect fit. Para was founded in 1985 and has a national client base of trusted partnerships focusing on pricing, coding, reimbursement, and compliance. And Para Healthcare really helps Hfri to provide additional financial services to assist hospitals in improving revenue generation. And again, if you're interested in learning more about the webinar or have any questions about Hfri or Para, please contact us at www.hfri.net. And one last part about us before going into the questions, just to kind of show that, we have over 300 clients across the country from coast to coast, large systems, small hospitals, critical accesses, and more. So moving forward into Q&A, let me see some of these questions here. One of the first ones that popped up is, how has Hfri handled price transparency? We have a solution through Para that is allowing us to ensure that our clients are compliant with the final rule. We compile charge masters, eligibility, and contract management together to put a summary out there of the out-of-pocket for a patient, as well as ensure that the government-mandated data is available for everyone to see. Our solution is placed onto a client's website and is very easy to use. Registration teams as well as patients really like to use this tool. So thank you very much for that question. Let me see the next one here. Someone had stated you made mention that you automated process flows. What drove that to be one of your major focuses? That's a very good question. A few years ago, we did an analysis that basically identified that once an account is worked incorrectly, it's really very difficult to get that account back on track and resolve timely. Our focus has been to implement a process that ensures a rep really knows what that problem is at the beginning and then guides them through the end of that. So we know that the more efficient somebody is, the less aging is going to go out there and the more dollars that can ultimately be collected. So I would say that's really the major reason that we build what we built. Here's always a fun question. What compliance steps have you taken for your remote workers? Don't want to put everyone to sleep here, but looking into, I would say the common security frameworks or CSFs on the market, like a HITRUST, or that's really a good starting point to ensure that you reduce your data leakage overall. Putting best practices in place, or knowing where your data is and controlling where it can go, is probably the most critical piece of all of this. And with us being HITRUST CSF certified, and their security framework really guides all of our processes to ensure the utmost compliance. So having those steps are really going to help to ensure remote working is not a problem. And if you're not partnered with somebody like that, I would suggest reaching out to just make sure that you have everything set up as solidly as possible. It always never hurts to have another set of eyes when it comes to compliance and keeping PHI safe. Another question about denials here. How has your denial analytics helped your teams improve your efficiency? Well, that's a great question. I would say one major win from constantly reviewing these rejections is that you can find mass wins to improve staff production. That really helps you to locate cash opportunities or work with clients for future resolutions of those issues. Maybe you can help remind them of where some edits are possible, or help them to work on a task force together and say, okay, we're all going to look at no-op denials, or we're all going to look at medical necessity issues and try to summarize what's happening there. As you can probably tell from our prior slides, we're always looking at this stuff. And, we always want to find the new issues that are popping up. One thing that we didn't really substantially go over on today's call was just looking at rejections over time and seeing where those areas are getting better versus where they're getting worse. Your teams are putting, I can't imagine how much work. Everybody is really working hard to ensure that these problems don't continue. And, everyone's always looking to find ways to reduce those issues. So it's always nice to see which action plans are working and then which ones need to be redesigned so that your efficiency continues to improve. I know that's always a never-ending process, but, hey, it's always going to ensure that you have the best outcome. A question was relating to the platform and what kind of technology we used for it. We built this system, and it's all on Amazon AWS. It's with .NET or Angular. All those process flows and all the steps that are built into the system were previously built out by our management teams. And then we created rule engine-based questions and answers for every process flow to guide you through the steps that it would take to resolve the account. That information was then input into the system. And so there's a lot of behind-the-scenes development that makes this tool work. And, I would say that we're very proud of it and glad to have this foundation built for our future. I think I probably have time for one more question here. What does it take to create a denial analysis? I would love to tell you that building that is a push-button option. It's not. Unfortunately, it does require you to do a lot of analysis and mapping of CARC and RARC codes. So I would say the starting point needs to be to identify a way to assess your winning problem, figure out what rule set you need to identify is causing the biggest issue on your account, what you have that you can assess your largest CARC and RARC combinations and identify what are real problems versus what are just reporting codes. And once you have that starting point, you can then dive in. I would suggest finding a team member that always reviews everything to the nth degree. While these team members historically may have lower production than others, they can be very beneficial to perform your deep dives and report back what is driving those problems. Knowing what kind of person you have, are they an amiable person, are they an analytical person, that's going to really help you figure out who's going to be best for that job. And use a spreadsheet to find those root causes and summarize what's happening. But we ran out of time, so thank you all very much for your time today. I know everyone's plates are full, so If you guys could please fill out that survey, we would really appreciate it. And thank you all very much for attending today's webinar.
Excellent. Like Daniel said, that is all the time we have for today. So I want to thank him one more time for just an excellent presentation, and also Healthcare Financial Resources for sponsoring today's webinar. To learn more about the content presented today, please check out the resources section on your webinar console. And like Daniel said, please fill out the post-webinar survey. Thank you for joining us today, and we really hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.